about the delay, everybody. Just me spent ages trying to implement some quirky bit of technology yesterday into my presentation, so I really wanted it to show. But anyway, we'll see what we can do. So I am a lecturer on the joint programme in social work and learning disability nursing. So I'm employed as a learning disability nurse lecturer here. I also have both qualifications. I did the joint programme myself, so I kind of feel I can really empathise with the students. So what my project is to look at was to develop an online meeting forum for nursing and social work students who are out on practice placements. So in terms of sort of setting the scene and outlining what the actual, it's not a problem, but what the issues are, to give you a bit of sort of background, students who do our programme, it's a 3-year programme, it's a degree, but they come out with 2 sets of professional qualifications. So they come out qualified as social workers and as learning disability nurses. So the course is really intense, as you can imagine. They do practice placements in each year. They do some in the first year, but they kind of tend to be shorter bursts and they have a bit more contact with university. But in the second year, they go out for one long 90-day stretch. That's 90 working days, so that can take about 4 or 5 months. And in the final year, they do 100-day. And that, again, that's all out in one go. It's quite an extended time away from the university. So what we know about students doing these kind of placements is that they can experience feelings of isolation and can feel very much cut off from their peers and from the university. And there's lots of, sort of research out there. I've quoted a couple here, Maidman and Young et al. And I mean, Maidman, she's an Australian lecturer who writes extensively. So it kind of is, it's an international issue. The literature from America says the same sort of thing. But also we know that just very sort of locally here in the University of Salford, we know from the end of year evaluations and we know from the placement evaluations that this can be, not for all students, but this can be a real issue for students, that they do feel that sort of sense of remoteness. So I thought that I would kind of focus on that for my project. So the aims of the project are essentially to provide support for students who are out on placement using synchronous media. That's something that McDonald's has written about. And I just wanted to sort of mention how that ties in with the UK PSF, particularly the areas such as developing effective learning environments and approaches to student support and guidance. So by implementing kind of a learning technology that was going to be of benefit to them to help their whole experience sort of holistically. And also around kind of improving and maintaining quality enhancement, and it's also about bridging the gap between what's happening in university and higher education and what's happening out in the wider world, in the wider context. So I really sort of thought that this project would kind of perhaps bring the 2 together. So what I'm intending to do is set up an online session that's going to be voluntary to participate in. So the sort of issues I've had to think of there is what kind of session am I going to use, what tool, what platform am I going to use, and how am I going to do it, sort of what times am I going to do it, are there going to be any restrictions on numbers. So I've spent sort of my sort of planning time has been investigating different tools. I've looked at Blackboard Collaborate. I've considered Skype, but there's issues around numbers and it not being free for groups. Blackboard Collaborate I have decided not to use in this occasion, although it might be in the future that is the tool I need to use, partly because I personally, I'm right with it now, but personally found it quite hard to get used to. And I think I want to do something that's going to be really quick and easy for the students, because being on placement is full on and intense anyway, and it's not something we've particularly used on our programme yet. So we only have small numbers. We have about, in this current year group, there's only about 20 students, and we never have more than sort of 30 is our max. So I would imagine that I'm never going to have more than about 10 people at any one time being able to participate in sessions. So for that reason, I've decided to use Google Hangout, because I think that is it's very easy to get into. It doesn't require much in the way of kind of understanding how to get into the system. They just need to be registered on Google Plus and have the technology. the speakers and the microphone, and off they go. But the only negative about that is numbers. It can only hold a maximum. A Google Hangout can only have a maximum of 10 people. So, but initially I'm saying that's going to be the one I'm going to use. And ultimately, I kind of want to create a community of practice really for the students. I want to give them an opportunity to share with each other about what's working, what's not working. When they're out in practice, there's a lot of ethical dilemmas that people come up against. They do all have practice educators and on-site supervisors there, so it's not about replacing that role. So I would be open to kind of looking at some theory with them possibly, but that's more something I think that they would do on a one-to-one with their kind of practice educators while they're actually out on placement. This is more just an opportunity to kind of check in with the peers, check in with the university, and just see how everyone's doing. What I would envisage as well is, and that's kind of the idea about community practice, it's everybody in it is kind of empowered to play an equal part. So it'll be about kind of them guiding it, them coming up maybe once we've kind of got up and going with the agenda, and them sort of very much contributing to how it's going to look, how it's going to run. I'm kind of thinking initially that I will offer it perhaps every 2 weeks. And perhaps, and this is something I've been kind of asking them what they think they would like, but they've only just gone out on placement, so it's quite hard for them to, I think, to have sort of got the head around this as well as kind of getting the head around the placement settings. I'm thinking perhaps about offering one during, say, like a Wednesday morning and one during an evening, because it's going to be reliant on them being able to kind of get an hour out of their work schedule while they're on placement, and also having access to computers and things. So. These are all kind of things that I want to pilot and try with them, and then I'll get feedback, and then we'll implement any ideas for next time. So how do I know that this is what they want? Well, like I said before, we know from the research, we know from our own students, but also just this particular year group. I've been talking about it with them since sort of September. And they felt collectively that it was something that they would utilise and benefit from. I've also been talking to our current third years who have already done their 90 days and they're about to go out on the 100 days in the spring. And they were also very much in agreement that this is something that they would have liked to have had available to them. And this is where my fantastic little bit comes in. I was excited about that because I'd spoken to the third and I invited them to send me a video to email or text it to me from the phone, just quick kind of sound. And she actually sent an audio file, which was like, oh, that's even more exciting. So I managed to kind of stick it in it, so I was quite pleased about that. In addition to students, I know that my colleagues on the team think this is a good idea, and just sort of from discussions that we've had at team meetings and things. And also I know that people in practice also think it's a good idea. Just from my, when I've been out kind of doing contract meetings with students and I've brought it up and they've kind of been very open to the fact that they'd be happy to relieve the students for half an hour to go and participate in one of these sessions. So in terms of why I do think it's a good idea, what are the strengths? As I've said, previous students have told us that they would have benefited from it, or that they have benefited from it. Our current students are really open to trying it. It provides an additional layer of support to complement the formal structures that are already in place. So it's not to replace anything, it's just to enhance the experience. And as I mentioned, my preferred tool is going to be Google Hangout. So that means that the meeting can be, another feature of Google Hangout is that it's recorded and it's put on YouTube. So obviously, dependent on the fact that participants give their permission, that then what we can do is it means that people who weren't able to attend will be able to kind of go on and watch that. Again, I'd need to explore that. We need to make sure things like confidentiality are adhered to and those kind of things. But it means that they're there then for other people to access who weren't able to participate. In terms of obstacles, a big one will be using and accessing technology. So you know, students who are doing nursing and social work aren't generally known for their kind of technological aptitude necessarily. Of course, you know, that's a bit sweeping generalisation, but so it's just things like not only having, say, a laptop available, because using PCs in the workplace is going to be problematic, but also having the right accessories, the microphones, the headsets, being registered, whether there's firewalls, if they were, you know, using any computers at work. Just the general lack of confidence in kind of using this stuff. So the students barely access Blackboard. I mean, they're getting better at it now, but historically they've really struggled even just getting on Blackboard and things. So what, in terms of kind of how I might overcome that, is I'll obviously do some pilot sessions to practice using the tool, give them confidence, and you know, perhaps think of some games and some sort of ways that we can. Ways I can get them interacting without being kind of, you know, it's not necessary to do with the subject, just sort of fun things. And then also having the time to attend a session. So my idea about that is perhaps provide sessions at different times to enable a broader range of students to be able to participate. How will I know if it's worked? Well, first of all, if people attend the sessions, then, you know, in itself that would be great. But what I'll take is informal feedback from individuals. Plus, I'll send questionnaires to everyone in the year, to those who participated and those who didn't, just to sort of find out if you didn't, why not, if you did, what was good about it, what wasn't so good about it. I'll take feedback from colleagues at team meetings. I'll be interested to know if perhaps with their tutees whether it's made any difference, particularly what people have been saying to them. And feedback from the practice educators via questionnaires, so they're kind of people that are out in practice to find out if they noted any difference. So my next steps are to, to pilot it, first of all, with the second. I mean, I'm well on track there. Like I say, they've just started their placements. The last few are sort of going out this week. So I'll have a go with them. And I would like to, whatever happens with these guys now, I'm going to also do it with the third years who are going out in placement in March, because they've been really up for it as well. They think it sounds like a really good idea. And then I would like to share the outcomes with with our School of Nursing, Midwifery and Social Work, possibly with a view to exploring whether this is something that we can open up for other cohorts as well. One thing that is difficult is obviously the other nursing and social work groups are huge kind of cohorts of students, and you know, no one is in the luxurious position that we are, just having sort of 28 or so. So that would require, you know, possibly only Blackboard Collaborate might be the only way to do it. And then, you know, possibly to write up the results for publication, depending on if they're newsworthy. And finally, I just thought this was a good quote to stick in at the end, by Mark Dole, who says that reinventing the wheel is a wasteful and dispiriting activity. Now that we have a language to describe that experience of practice, teaching and learning, we have an opportunity to spend more time creatively, to extend the metaphor, using the wheels to build different kinds of vehicles for the learning. And that's kind of what I'm intending this to be, basically, an alternative vehicle to learning. So that's it. Thank you very much.
1 minute to go still.
A minute to go. It's not likely.
Questions?
I wondered if you, I don't know her second name, but you probably know Melanie in nursing.
Melanie Stevens.
Yeah, have you spoken to Melanie?
No, I know Melanie, but I haven't spoken to her.
Right, well that's great that you said you're going to share it with the wider school, because Melanie did some work with Helen Keegan over 5 years ago on supporting nurses on placement, nursing students on placement.
Right.
And there was a whole range of European projects around that time. ESMOS, I think, was the one that was based at Salford, but there's a guy called Jeff Haywood who's at the University of Edinburgh and he was on a project that specifically looked at technological constraints of students out on placement, because they've all got different, as you've identified, they've all got these different environments, but you know, you might as well benefit from work that's already been done. But what I specifically wanted to ask you about, and you mentioned ethical approval, sorry, at the ethics of it.
Yeah.
You know, these students are discussing patients and clients on a semi-public and recordable medium. And I mean, that is really quite a big thing, isn't it? I just wondered how you're going to, I mean, it's not in, by the time you deal with issues as they come up, the CAP could already be out of the bag.
Yeah, and I guess I would probably, in terms of sort of the first sort of pilot session or two, kind of keep it pretty just a fun way of getting to see each other and everybody literally hanging out, doing some sort of interactive games maybe, just to get people confident at using the equipment. But yes, that would need consideration. I mean, the idea is because Blackboard Collaborate is also recordable, isn't it? So I suppose that's it. You'd kind of
applies to any. It applies to
yeah.
any.
There's a password for Blackboard where there isn't on that.
If it's on that, if it's on YouTube.
But then you can still have links that you can share.
No, it's not just the recording, because as soon as they actually name a client or patient, even with a fellow student, they could be getting into difficulties.
No, we would make sure that there was no names of places mentioned, and the students are really hot on confidentiality. Right. They have to write extensively about it on placement. So in terms of names of agencies or individuals, I could pretty much guarantee that they wouldn't come up, but still we'd be discussing possibly sensitive like dilemmas and things like that.
There's a woman called Anne-Marie Cunningham who's a GP lecturer at the University of Cardiff, and she's done some absolutely fascinating work on this. There are doctors who are students and who are young professional doctors openly discussing patients on Facebook groups, thinking that they're in some sort of private area. It's absolutely terrifying. You know? So she's got some fantastic blog posts.
I haven't got a pen and paper, but I need to get all these names off you.
Everything down and I'll put it on your blog.
Oh, bless you, thank you. That's great. Yeah, no, thanks for that.
We're not speakers today.
So just go back to your point earlier, though, you're saying that it's not replacing supervision and supporting practice, because they've got their own site supervisors to discuss cases anyway, haven't they?
Exactly,
it's more of a keeping in touch as well. Obviously it's not run yet, but I would imagine it wouldn't be all about casework.
No, because they'll have their individual, they've got the formal structures that they can use.
It's more about the university side and what's happening in the university.
And just giving everybody, I mean, I don't want to be too prescriptive. I want to set it up and let's see where it goes, because it might end up being quite informal, quite light-hearted, but it might be that they say, oh, actually, you know, there's a bunch of us that could really do with just a bit of extra input about group work. Would you mind doing a session on, you know, on some group work theory or advocacy theory or something? And in addition, what's actually come out since I've been planning this is that it looks like our year, these guys that have just gone out now are going to be piloting, they're going to just be guinea pigs, but they're going to be piloting electronic submission of their placement portfolios, which hasn't been done before because it's very paper heavy. So we were kind of thinking about how, because they're all out now, we haven't got them in university again, how can we go through that process with them? And it was like, maybe I could use a couple of these sessions to get people to come together and I could show them how to go about it, because you get the opportunity on Hangout, a bit like Collaborate, you can show slides and do that, do that kind of stuff at the same time. So
I was just wondering how you're going to manage this, the numbers limit, because you've got 28 people. So are you going to split them into groups of 10 or fewer, or are you going to, the last 11th person in can't get in, or in fact the 9th person in the order?
I've been thinking about that.
How are you going to deal with that?
I haven't come to a conclusion about that yet, but I think, well, this initial cohort now, there's like 19, so I would be very surprised if more than half of them were going to come at any one time. But I do kind of need to think about that, and it might be that I do come back to Blackboard Collaborate, but perhaps if they've had a go at trying it with Google Hangout, it's a similar concept, then they might be a bit more happy to use Collaborate. So.
I think that would be a nice problem to have if you have, because I mean, if I was busy doing placement, and with no disrespect, I'd be thinking, I'd have to have something there to draw me to it.
Yeah.
You'd be discussing the assessment or...
Yeah.
Because the best school in the world,
Yeah. You just think,
you've got to finish my day's work, or I've got to get on, or, you know...
Yeah, yeah. And we've got a lot of mature students, they come home, they've got families,
Yeah,
they've got
so-
lives,
yeah.
you know, so...
So they could go into Google Hangout for an hour, or for, I don't know if that...
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a purpose...
Yeah.
I think students use Facebook or something like that.
They use Facebook as they're chatting to all the mates.
They use it,
but-
that's what I mean, they're using Facebook anyway,
Yeah.
so I suppose it's replacing that Facebook.
Which is why my ideal would be to run a session during the weekday, where
Yeah,
we've
I
kind of more or less
that.
got in, you know, placement settings have more or less given their permission. Certainly all the people I've spoken to have said they'd be happy to free up a student to go, because it's a form of supervision really. So to free up them to go and spend half an hour doing this, you know.
I see people doing it more in the day for something
Yeah,
like that.
then coming home and doing
Yeah.
it. But it's just a consideration to think if there was
Yeah.
some people who would
Might
that
be
be their
a low-
preferred.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is a really good idea to speak to Melanie, because this is my 6-year-old memory of what was said, but my recollection was that there was one student who was on an international placement and the
Yeah.
rest were on local placements. And the interesting exchange was that the international students, the one who was abroad, needed more personal support, so
Right.
you know, social, emotional support,
Yeah.
because she was feeling a bit far from home. But actually, the trade-off was that the other students got a sort of vicarious experience of being on an international placement. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think there was some interesting findings.
And it's something that we're kind of looking into we're implementing a new curriculum with our current first years at the moment, and we are looking into them having the opportunity to do an elective 2-week abroad placement, you know, in the future. So again, this might be a really good way of kind of keeping them connected then. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Do you want to take 5?